I'm gonna have some words by the crew. We are some of many parts. Want y'all listening to just pay attention, because it's the cheapest price any of you can pay.
It's been an honor and a pleasure, and in the words of our good brother Steve Biko, revolution is not an event, it's a process. Peace.
First of all, I want to thank you, man, all of the years, man, of writing good records.
You know Public Enemy as hip-hop revolutionaries, the group that turned music into a weapon against injustice. They called themselves the Prophets of Rage, and Chuck D branded their art as the Black CNN, a news network for voices the mainstream ignored. They fought systemic racism with every beat, every lyric, every sample. But what happens when the Black CNN reports on its own collapse? What happens when the revolutionary partnership at the heart of the group is exposed as fake? The truth is, Public Enemy's legacy wasn't just built on fighting the power. It was defined by the devastating conflicts that tore them apart from the inside out. Let's start with the most recent explosion. In 2020, Public Enemy made headlines, but not for their music. Chuck D announced he was firing Flavor Flav, his partner of over 35 years. The reason? A Bernie Sanders rally. Chuck D wanted Public Enemy Radio, his side project, to perform at the event. But when promoters used Flavor Flav's image and trademark clock without permission, Flav's lawyers sent a cease and desist letter. Chuck D painted himself as the noble activist, claiming the rally was benevolent work. He accused Flav of refusing to participate because it was free, saying Flavor chooses to dance for his money. But Flav saw it differently. He argued his likeness was stolen for a political endorsement he never made. He wasn't against activism. He was against Chuck D using their shared brand for his personal political agenda. Flav tweeted in frustration asking if Chuck really wanted to destroy something they built over 35 years over politics. Then came the twist. On April 1st, 2020, Chuck D announced the whole firing was a hoax. He called it a War of the Worlds moment, a stunt to wake people up and critique how the media obsesses over negative news. Clever, right? Except Flavor Flav immediately shut that story down. He tweeted that he was not part of any hoax and told Chuck the world needs better leadership. This wasn't a calculated media trick. It was a messy public divorce that Chuck D tried to rewrite as performance art. The hoax claim was damage control, a desperate attempt to regain control of a narrative that had spiraled out of his hands. So whose side are you on in this mess? Was Chuck D right to put politics first, or was Flavor Flav justified in protecting his image? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button for more deep dives into hip-hop history. But this wasn't a sudden breakup. The cracks had been forming for years, and they were all about money. In 2017, Flavor Flav filed a lawsuit against Chuck D and Public Enemy's management. His claims were brutal. He said he hadn't received royalty checks in years, despite having co-writing credits on over 50 songs. He alleged his payments from merchandise and live shows had shrunk to almost nothing. One of the biggest points of contention was the 2017 album, Nothing is Quick in the Desert. Flav claimed his voice was used without his full consent or proper payment. He said he was owed $75,000, but only received $7,500. Worse, he felt blindsided when he heard his vocals on the final record. Vocals he thought were poor quality and never approved. This wasn't just about unpaid checks. It was about respect, creative control, and being treated as an equal partner. Chuck D's response? He dismissed the lawsuit as TMZ dramas. He questioned Flav's songwriting claims on Twitter and suggested the legal action was pushed by Flav's new management, not Flav himself. This reaction exposed the real power dynamic. Chuck D wasn't just the prophet, he was the boss. The relationship between the political visionary and the comic foil was a facade. Behind the scenes, Chuck controlled the money, the decisions, and the brand. Flavor Flav, the man who made Public Enemy's message accessible to millions, was reduced to a sideshow, starved out financially, and dismissed publicly. The partnership that looked equal on stage was anything but equal behind closed doors. Chuck later admitted Flav had been on suspension since 2016, revealing years of hidden tension. Before Flavor Flav, there was Professor Griff. In 1989, Griff, the group's Minister of Information, gave an interview to the Washington Times that set off a firestorm. He claimed Jews were responsible for the majority of the wickedness that goes on across the globe. He declared, Jews are wicked, and we can prove this. These weren't isolated comments. Griff had made similar homophobic and anti-Semitic remarks in UK magazine interviews before, but they hadn't reached the American mainstream yet. When they finally did, the backlash was immediate and intense. Chuck D's response was a disaster. He fired Griff, then reinstated him, then briefly disbanded the entire group, and finally reformed it without Griff. He later admitted he had to assume the role of boss because if he let go of the steering wheel, the car would go off the cliff. His compromise solution ended up pleasing nobody, but the chaos wasn't just internal. Chuck was under massive external pressure. Public Enemy was negotiating a major production deal at the time, and Def Jam executives, including Lear Cohen, the son of Israeli immigrants, gave him an ultimatum: fire Griff or the deal collapses. This moment laid bare the contradiction at the heart of Public Enemy. They built their brand on uncompromising revolutionary politics, but that brand was funded and distributed by a corporate label with its own sensitivities. When Griff's comments threatened a lucrative business deal, the revolutionary leader caved to corporate pressure. Chuck D made a business decision dressed up as a moral one. The group that claimed to fight the system was revealed to be dependent on it. But Public Enemy didn't apologize quietly. They channeled the controversy into their 1990 album, Fear of a Black Planet. The lead single, Welcome to the Terror Dome, was written directly in response to the backlash. The lyrics compared their persecution to the crucifixion of Jesus. Rather than offering a genuine apology, Chuck D doubled down, positioning the group as martyrs. The decision to release this song, especially after briefly reinstating Griff, made their initial condemnation of his remarks seem superficial. It provoked even more outrage. The damage was permanent. The controversy led to boycotts, including one organized by the Jewish Defense Organization against Spike Lee's film Do the Right Thing, which featured Public Enemy's anthem, Fight the Power. The charge of anti-Semitism shadowed them for years. In 1999, they released the song Swindler's Lust, which mocked the film Schindler's List with lyrics about laughing all the way to the bank and owning the banks. Decades later, in 2020, Professor Griff appeared on Nick Cannon's podcast, where they discussed similar anti-Semitic conspiracy theories about Jewish control of finance. The ideology that sparked the 1989 crisis never went away. It festered, reinforcing the scar on their legacy. Now let's talk about the so-called rivalry with NWA. There wasn't one. Public Enemy and NWA were brothers, not enemies. In 1988, they both released their landmark albums, It Takes a Nation of Millions to Hold Us Back and Straight Outta Compton. Together, these records represented two sides of the same coin. Public Enemy delivered macro-level political analysis, a dense critique of systemic racism. NWA provided micro-level street journalism, visceral reports from the front lines of police brutality and gang violence. Both were fulfilling Chuck D's vision of rap as the black CNN, just reporting from different bureaus. Ice Cube, NWA's chief lyricist, said they were so influenced by Public Enemy and tried to emulate the Bomb Squad's groundbreaking production style. He called Chuck D his favorite rapper of all time. After Ice Cube left NWA in 1989, Chuck D and the Bomb Squad produced his solo debut, Amiri KKK's Most Wanted. This wasn't rivalry, it was mentorship and brotherhood. But here's the problem. Despite their shared mission, the market chose a winner, and it wasn't Public Enemy. Chuck D distinguished between positive hardcore, his didactic revolutionary work, and negative hardcore, his term for gangster rap. He called gangster rap the easy way out, arguing it told compelling street stories, but didn't understand the structure behind those stories. He was right in one sense. Gangster rap focused on symptoms without always providing systemic analysis. But the market didn't care. The ghetto-centric narratives of NWA, Snoop Dogg, and Dr. Dre were more sensational and marketable. The spectacle of black anger, the cinematic depictions of crime and rebellion was easier to commodify than dense political thought. Public Enemy's complex message was pushed to the margins. They lost the cultural war to the very artists they mentored. The revolution was televised, but it was edited for mass consumption. What about LL Cool J? There was no rivalry there either. Public Enemy and LL were both foundational Def Jam artists. Chuck D praised LL's icon status, and LL recently called Chuck D a GOAT MC with one of the greatest voices in hip-hop history. They even jointly inducted the Beastie Boys into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. The perception of tension comes from one source, the 1990 Sonic Youth song Cool Thing. The song wasn't hip-hop beef, it was an art rock critique. Sonic Youth's Kim Gordon had interviewed LL for Spin magazine in 1989 and found his views on women, like claiming the guy has to have control over his woman, to be sexist and frustrating. She channeled that frustration into Cool Thing. Chuck D appears on the track acting as a hype man for Gordon, telling her to hit them where it hurts. This wasn't a rivalry. It was Chuck D publicly co-signing a critique of his own label mates' misogyny. It exposed the fractures and hypocrisy within their own Def Jam family. Chuck played both sides, maintaining friendships while undermining them. So what's the real story of Public Enemy? The group that positioned itself as the Black CNN was a dysfunctional mess. Their partnership was a facade covering up financial disputes disguised as hoaxes. Their ideology was tainted by anti-Semitism that never fully went away. Their political message, as powerful as it was, ultimately lost in the marketplace to a more digestible form of rage. The revolutionary fire they brought burned brightest when directed outward, but it also scorched everything inside the group itself, leaving permanent scars that would never fully heal. They preached unity, but lived division, creating a contradiction that defined their entire existence as a group. But here's the thing. This messy, conflict-ridden history is exactly why Public Enemy remains so important. Their legacy is the conflict. They didn't just fight racist institutions, corporate labels, and a hostile media. They fought each other, and they fought themselves. The noise they brought to the world was the sound of these real, human, messy battles. Their story isn't clean or simple. It's complicated, flawed, and brutally honest. And that complexity is what cements their status as one of the most vital and consequential artistic forces in American history. They showed us that revolution isn't neat. It's chaotic, painful, and full of contradictions. And maybe that's the most revolutionary thing of all. Their failures taught us as much as their triumphs ever could. So what's your favorite Public Enemy track? Let us know in the comments. And make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss our next video.